we have the one and only, the universal galactic, as I like to call him, professor himself, Dr. Cornel West. And as many of us know, and if you don't know, you finding out right here, right now, that Dr. Cornel West is running in the 2024 presidential election cycle. And I gotta say, hallelujah to that. Now, Dr. West is running for truth and justice. And as a candidate for president of the United States of America, Dr. West is running as a Green Party candidate. And I want to reintroduce America. This is what Dr. West is saying, to the best of itself, the dignity, the courage, and creativity of precious everyday people. Join our movement for priceless, poor, and working people of all colors here and abroad. That is a direct quote from Dr. Cornel West. Dr. West, we are so excited to have you here with us today on TYT, The Conversation. I have so many questions that I want to ask you, but I want to remind folks of our journey together, if I may, and if I might. I have been honored to know of you for many years, starting as a college student. The first book that I read of yours was Race Matters. I still have that book. As a matter of fact, I have several copies of that book, and I was blessed to have you autograph that book. Never in my wildest dreams did I ever believe or think that you and I one day would come so close, other than that autograph you gave me when I was in college, but that we would work together side by side with so many other freedom fighters on Senator Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign. And we were blessed to travel all over this country, but particularly my memories are beaming with the times that we were in the South, particularly in South Carolina. And it was people like you and also Mr. Danny Glover, the lethal weapon himself, and Mayor Gus Newport, the mayor of Berkeley, who just recently passed away. So Dr. West, it is so good to have you on this show. And I want to talk to our viewers. I want us to have a dialogue about why you are running for president. Why now? Why this moment? And why you?
First, my dear sister, I want to say that it is an unadulterated joy and blessing to set eyes on you, to be in conversation with you. That is so true that we have so many precious memories with Brother Bernie and Brother Danny Glover and Sister Heather and so many others there as part of the campaign. You really were the heart and soul of Brother Bernie's campaign. I know he would say exactly the same thing, but I just want to thank you for being my sister. I want to thank you for being my comrade. And I want to thank you for being your mama and daddy's child, that you have set such high standards of spirit and struggle and mind. And in so many ways, you know, that this campaign is very much about that. You see, I happen to be one who had so much love and integrity and courage poured into me by Irene and Clifton West and Shiloh Baptist Church and the Black Panther Party to try to be a force for good, in the language of John Coltrane. And whatever context, whatever the situation, whatever site, you try to bear witness to a truth and pursue a justice. And so when I decided to make this spiel over into electoral politics, it's the same calling as it was in the classroom. It's the same calling on the street, same calling in the cell, same calling in the nightclub, same calling in the church, which is to speak the truth. And the condition of truth is to allow suffering to speak. So I'm going to look at the world through the lens of the least of these, through indigenous peoples, through Black folk, through prisoners, women, working people, oppressed people, not just here, but around the world. So that's the legacy of Martin King, Fannie Lou Hamer, Ella Baker, Edward Said, and Grace Lee Boggs, and, you know, the Sister Marina, Luisa Marina, known as the godmother of the Latino movement, who was deported by the U.S. government, went down to Guatemala. They overthrew Arbenz. U.S. overthrows Arbenz. She's deported from Guatemala, but still struggling. See, it's her voice. It's her legacy that feeds into who I am, even though very much, as I'm first to say that I try to embrace everybody, but I begin on the chocolate side of town. You see, I begin with the black folk who shaped me and molded me. And so here I find myself now at this low moment in American empire, so many lies, so many crimes. People don't want to tell the truth. They don't want to be self-critical. They don't want to be pushed. And I just have to do what I've always done. It just happens now to be in the context of presidential politics.
Yeah, I mean, Dr. West, you sound very much like you do in the classroom, like you did on the campaign trail. And when you are telling the truth doesn't change. And so that is what you are, that's what you're speaking to. You know, my maternal grandmother used to always say you could put truth in the river 5 days after a lie, but truth gonna catch up. And the truth really has caught up with us today as a nation and the world. I'm very fascinated, Dr. West, that you are bringing into your critique of human suffering, but also human possibility, a global lens too, as a presidential campaign. What drives you to try to get people to see ourselves not just as citizens of the United States of America, but citizens of the world and the interconnectedness of the suffering of everyday people?
Absolutely. One is that, you see, one sign of spiritual immaturity is denial. And the dominant mainstream narratives about America have been in denial of the plight of our precious indigenous brothers and sisters. That was the first sin. Denial of the barbarity of the enslavement of Africans. It's the second sin. The denial of working people, whatever color, who still didn't have the right to vote until the 1830s because it was a colonial settler experiment just for the well-to-do. The denial of women's humanity, the denial of gay brothers and lesbian sisters and trans and so forth. The denial early on of the Catholics and the Jews and the Protestant nations. So denial has to be shattered. That's the first move of truth telling. See, and all I'm trying to do is to say, you know, as Malcolm said, these chickens are going to come home to roost. You're going to reap what you sow. The very thing you deny will come back and haunt you and undercut where you stand, and will do in or pull the rug from under you, as it were. You see, and so now here we are as an American empire, where we got neo-fascist Trump leading the nation towards civil war, and you got Joe Biden leading the nation toward World War III with the proxy war with Russia, with our precious Ukrainian brothers and sisters in the middle, dealing with all of the indescribable suffering. But it means then that if that's the choice, civil war with Trump, world war with Joe Biden, we between a rock and a hard place.
Yes, we are, Dr. West. And a lot of the polling is showing, I mean, we look at both major parties for a moment. I know I want to remind folks that Dr. Cornel West is running for president of the United States of America as a Green Party candidate for the 2024 presidential election. So Dr. West, both major parties, and you brought up President Joe Biden, you brought up former President Donald J. Trump. The polling among Americans is showing that America doesn't want either one of them at all, even though the two major parties are basically ramming these two down our throats. But it's very clear across the political spectrum that the American people do not want to see a rematch in 2024, but yet here we are. So Dr. West, to the people on the so-called left who would say, oh my God, you know, they loved you before. You are still internationally known, as I say, known throughout the galaxy. Dr. Cornel West, a philosopher, a freedom fighter, a man of God, a gangster, a recovered gangster, as you like to call yourself sometimes, a Christian with gangster proclivities. In other words, we all have failings, is really your point. But to the people who loved you so much before, but now are really damning your name, and I'm talking about neoliberals who question, you know, the audacity, you know, how dare you run, and then you run as a third party candidate, and the charge that you are putting Joe Biden's presidency at risk, and also empowering Donald J. Trump. What do you say to people who say that or believe that?
Well, I mean, one, you always initially try to listen and see whether they've got a strong argument or not, see what logical power they have in their formulations. But I proceed on the notion that my life has never been one wedded to popularity and reputation. It's wedded to integrity and vocation. That I don't care how many people love or don't love. If I'm doing the right thing, if I'm loving right, if I'm speaking with integrity, if I'm being true to my calling, that's all I'm concerned about. Because things come and go. You know that the one's popularity and one's reputation can ebb and flow. But I have a sense of a calling to the truth, so that I'm not going to remain silent when I talk about the plight of Palestinians, and that's a taboo issue in the Democratic Party. I'm not going to remain silent when we talk about Wall Street greed and people don't want to come to terms with it in the corporate-dominated Democratic Party. I'm not going to remain silent about the mass incarceration regime, which is a crime against humanity. I've been blessed to teach there for 41 years. There's levels of barbarity in our prison system that ought to make every American citizen ashamed. Of course, I'm going to raise my voice. They won't say a mumbling word about it. I'm not going to remain silent about ecocide and the escalating catastrophe with the wiping out of life on Earth because they wedded to fossil fuel companies. I'm not going to remain silent about a whole host of these issues that the Democratic and Republican parties come together on. Look at the strikes going on right now. UPS escalating. Amazon, Hollywood already. Both Democrats and Republicans are on the boss's side. How many are taking a stand for the workers? How many are taking a stand in solidarity with the folk who've been exploited generation after generation? That's what it is to have a calling. That's what it is to try to be a person of integrity. Now, of course, you're absolutely right. I got so much gangster in me, and I'm just glad somebody's praying for me. But I try to wrestle with it every day and recognize I could be wrong. See, I am fallible, so I want to listen. You know, Sister Joan Walsh and the others want to argue, well, West ain't got no business running for president. He ought to apologize when he supported Ralph Nader. Hey, sister, let's sit down and have an argument. What do you think that every time the Democrats lose and the Greens get 1% or 2%, that they have sole responsibility for the reason you lost? Why don't you check yourself and wonder why you generating such mediocre and milquetoast candidates that's not speaking to the needs of poor and working people? Be a little Socratic, Sister Joan, please.
There it is, Dr. West. There it is. And even in the face of the polling, because even if I put in the parking lot, you'll run. And we'll put it in the parking lot just for a couple of seconds. The American people who participated in the polling, when they were asked the question about the prospects of the 2024 election cycle, who they wanted to see run, it was neither of these two candidates. They did not. So whether you're running or not, Dr. West, the American people are saying on the right and on the left that they do not want to see a rematch between these two candidates. But yet the corporatist power, the neoliberal, the neoconservative powers, the fascist powers on the Republican side, the neoliberal powers on the Democratic side, they really don't care what the American people want. Obviously, if they cared about what the American people want, we would have universal health care in this country. Corporations, we wouldn't have laissez-faire government, laissez-faire going rampant in this country. Prescription drugs will be affordable in this country, so on and so forth. So it's obvious that the two major parties do not necessarily listen to what the American people want and what they need. But Dr. West, why? Why would you take a risk and run in the Green Party when you could have ran, this is another argument, as a revolutionary, freedom-fighting, anti-neoliberal Democrat?
Yeah, see, things are getting oxymoronic when you start talking about revolutionary Democrat these days. There's some decent people in the Democratic Party. And of course, I always have the love of Brother Bernie. He's not in the Democratic Party, but he's working so closely with them now. But no, the Democratic Party is so undemocratic, unsocratic that they're not going to have primaries that allow for debates. It's hard to raise your voice that's critical of the Democratic Party if you're within the party. More and more, they're requiring a kind of presumptuous loyalty to the candidate. So it's hard to tell the truth about the candidate, but just say it's hard to tell the truth about the system and the empire that the candidate is the head of. So that the Democratic Party more and more is using progressives as window dressing, and in the end, at their core, is really it's really corporate wealth, it's really corporate power, and militarism as well. And most of them vote for expansion of the military budget. Most of them don't really want to cut back on the 800 military units around the world, or U.S. troops in over 150 countries. They don't want to deal with the need for the massive redistribution downward. They don't want to deal for the massive move of monies to military. But they get austerity like when it comes to social needs, when it comes to schools, jobs with a living wage, decent housing, quality education, and so forth. So in that sense, I must say, one of the lessons I learned from Brother Bernie, and I'll never forget being with that brother in Nevada. Oh, boy, that was a sublime moment, because it looked like we was going to win.
Yeah, we would have, Dr. West, had it not been.
Obama made that call. Made that call. Neoliberals dropped out the race. But Bernie. That was the thing. Right. Anybody but Bernie. I said to myself, but these folk would rather lose than change.
That's it. And you know who's gonna lose the most is the everyday people that you talk about on a regular basis.
That's the key right
there. They're the biggest losers. But Dr. West, for those who are not neoliberals, those in the grassroots progressive movement who would say, "Dag, Doc, running as a Democrat, even reluctantly so, would give you a better opportunity in terms of raising money, etc." So I want you to speak to the people who are vibing with your message, but just believe that because the two parties have crushed third parties so much that even reluctantly, you would have had a better chance running as a Democrat, even though you're not of it, just using it as a tool. What do you say to them?
I was telling them that the Democratic Party has a long history of crushing the progressives within its own ranks. And when they don't do that, they co-opt them. They incorporate them. They deodorize, sterilize, sanitize them into their mainstream. That's the challenge right now. Sister ALC, God bless her. See, she come in full of fire. Oh, she's swinging like Muhammad Ali when she came in. Now things have gotten smoothed out. Now things have been incorporated and co-opted in that way. Now she still got a long life, so she could change. But we got to just tell the truth. People can see the transformation. They can see the evolution in that way, you see. Now she still got some fire, I'm sure. She's always going to have some fire. But we have to be honest about it. The Democratic Party specializes in that. So you end up with all of these black faces in high places, and they can't say a mumbling word about mass incarceration, can't say a mumbling word about poverty and homelessness in a consistent way, and won't say a mumbling word about Palestinians. And you say, what happened? What happened was they got co-opted. They got big positions, they got status, they become these would be a way of talking about it though. They become peacocks, strutting around. Look at me, I'm the head of this. I got this status. I got this big position. Yeah. We could hear Malcolm X saying peacocks strut because they can't fly.
Come on, talk about it.
We want to fly like eagles. Keep track of what's happening all the way down in the lower strata, in the hoods, and on the reservations, in the barrios, in the ghettos, in the working class communities, no matter what color. 1 out of 8 folk who voted for Trump voted for Brother Bernie. So just because Trump's a neo-fascist doesn't mean everybody who voted for him is a neo-fascist. They tired of the arrogance and the hypocrisy of the Democratic Party. They tired of the arrogance and the hypocrisy of the professional managerial strata. And they want somebody to speak to their needs. 40% of US population who can vote, don't vote at all.
That's right. And the majority of voters
who vote for the Green Party would not vote for any party whatsoever.
That's true, Dr. West. And the majority of voters don't even identify with Republican or Democrat. I mean, if independent was a party, it would be the majority. Party. Dr. West, speaking of strutting like a peacock, you at a recent rally for Black Lives Matter, it was on July 15th, I believe. You are quoted as saying, for the last 40 to 50 years, we've had too many Black leaders who have become too well adjusted to injustice. That's what it is to live in an American empire that is in internal decay as it spends trillions of dollars on war. So you don't mince any words for Democrats, for Republicans, and you certainly don't mince words for Black leaders. Would you expound a little bit on that critique of Black leaders in particular who become maladjusted to injustice? Certainly you, me, myself, we saw a lot of that maladjustment in the South as we were traveling for Senator Bernard Sanders, especially in South Carolina.
Well, I think it also has to do with your heroic efforts to be one of the few courageous and visionary members of Congress, and that big money that flowed in. I'll never forget my beloved Anna Heath, my wife, and I spending that time with you in Cleveland. It was just a magnificent and accurate, magnificent moment, you see. But no, you get that backlash blues that Nina Simone sings about with such power. The backlash against the truth tellers, the backlash against the justice seekers. You've had to wrestle with that over and over again. So when I look around at the Black leadership and I say, well, don't you know you come from a great Black people who produced Martin King and Malcolm X and Ella Baker and Fannie Lou Hamer? Do you know what it means to take those high standards seriously? And when you do, then you ought to be critical of your conformity. You ought to be critical of your cowardliness when it comes to your refusal to raise your voice or your willingness to be silenced in the name of these fundamental issues like poverty and mass incarceration and corporate greed and wealth inequality. They set the standard. It's like when you pick up your saxophone and say you want to be a great player, then look at John Coltrane. He set a standard to going back home and practice and understand where you come from, understand the greatness of the people that produced you. So it is in politics. So it is in intellectual work in terms of Du Bois. So it is in literature with Toni Morrison, Gwendolyn Brooks, and Ralph Ellison. We got high standards. Part of my presidential candidate is to do what? Remind folk of the greatness of the moral and spiritual standards of a hated, terrorized, and traumatized people that kept dishing out love warriors and wounded healers and freedom fighters every generation. What a people.
Ooh-wee, Dr. West, I could listen to you prophesy for hours. That is it. And yes, they tried to crush me. I want to thank you. I've thanked you many times with my opportunity to publicly thank you for being right by my side in Cleveland, Ohio. And that's exactly why they didn't want somebody like me in Congress, because they know I wasn't going to roll over. I wasn't going to capitulate. I wasn't going to settle down. You know, I had a boss who once said, if your hair is on fire, act like your hair is on fire. When people are hungry, when they are unhoused, when they can't make a living wage, where they can't afford daycare for their children, when they can't get sick and take off, my hair is on fire. And I'm going to comport myself like that. And I will not be clutching any pearls.
Ooh.
In the face of people suffering.
That's it.
So I'm with you, Doc. You know, a lot of what you're saying too reminds me of another great, and by the name of Eugene Debs. And earlier, when you first started this interview, one of my favorite quotes by Eugene Debs, who ran for president of the United States of America, he said, while there is a lower class, I am in it. Where there is a criminal element, I am of it. And while there is a soul in prison, I am not free. Dr. West, that's you.
That's Eugene. This brother got 1 million votes running for president in the jail cell.
Yes, he did.
That's how deep that was.
He was shaking it up. Look, they changed the rules to jail him.
I know.
Because they saw him as a threat. And that's so many freedom fighters like us, the system sees as a threat, and they'll do anything to try to shut down those voices. And as far as I'm concerned, there is no progressive caucus in the United States Congress. They're just a softer, gentler version of the neoliberals. But I digress, Dr. West.
No, you're not digressing at all. You're telling the truth. You're telling the truth.
What is it that you want, in our final few minutes together? Again, if you are just tuning into the conversation, I am Nina Turner. This is TYT, The Conversation, and I have the honor to interview the one and only Dr. Cornel West, who is running for president in the 2024 presidential election on the Green Party ticket. And Dr. West, your pillars of your campaign: create true democracy, revitalize our economy, Medicare for all, in the wars, expand civil liberties, protect the environment. So if people want a summation, just a summation of what you are standing for and what you are running on, that's the summation right there. Dr. West, in our final minutes together, what is it that you want people to know about your campaign, and how can they find you and get involved?
No, it is Dr. Cornel West 24 at gmail.com. But no, it's an abolitionist movement. I want the abolition of poverty. I want the abolition of homelessness and the unhoused. I want the abolition of the massive exploitation of workers. I support the strong progressive wing of the trade union movement to make sure that precious workers have a job with a living wage. I want to make sure that we have women who have control over their bodies and reproductive rights. I want to make sure our gay brothers and lesbian sisters and trans are treated with dignity, even given the tremendous challenge that has to do in terms of how that flushes out with sports. I want to make sure that our migrants and asylums are treated with dignity, treated humanely. And I want to keep accountable the wickedness in high places, the corporate greed that will push the whole earth to the edge onto their commitment to short-term profits so they can continue to live lives of luxuries on their yachts. I don't hate them. I hate their greed. And as a Christian, I follow Jesus into the temple that ran out those money changers, not because he hated the rich, but because he hated greed. And he was willing to be put on a cross by the Roman Empire in his solidarity with poor people. So what does it mean to follow that kind of Jesus? And you can't do it if you're on Pontius Pilate's payroll.
Ooh, come on, Dr. West. Bring it on home. Well, Dr. West, it has been certainly an honor to have you here on The Conversation. You have given our viewers so much to absorb. I can't wait to watch our interview over and over and over again. It is indeed the pleasure to have you, sir. And thanks to you, and thank you to Dr. Anahita West and the rest of your family for making the sacrifice to run for president of the United States of America. And not only are you are running as a third party candidate to show Americans that they have different choices and there is another way. The intergalactic justice warrior himself, Dr. Cornel West, he is running for president in the 2024 presidential election on the Green Party ticket. You can find Dr. West at cornelwest24.org. You can also find Dr. Cornel West on Twitter, on Instagram, on all the social media, and it is listed. If you feel so inclined, please make sure you support Dr. West. Dr. West, thank you for shaking up the conversation.
I'm giving you a big, big hug all the way across, mediated with the tech. Now, we thank Sister Marissa for her wonderful work as well, and the brother whose name I don't know, but he was wonderful too. Stay strong, stay strong.
Thank you, Dr. West. You as well, and take care of yourself, okay? We need you on the trail.